Shalom, shalom, Sister Leah.
Shalom, shalom, sister. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Well, I just want to thank you before we start for allowing us to share your testimony for our brothers and sisters to hear, and other people who come to our channel and view our content. I'm very grateful that you are sharing with our audience because I feel that your testimony will help many because you have a powerful testimony. So I just want to share that. I
Well,
appreciate
thank
that
you.
very
Thank you.
much.
And I pray that Yah will deliver and Rahu will conduct this accordingly, decent and in order, and that it do just that. It will help others to maybe overcome some of the things that I am still overcoming as we speak.
Mm,
Okay.
right.
Um, I'm going to start off from the beginning.
Okay.
When I was born, I was given away. My mother gave me away. And I am really kind of grateful because in situations like that, we don't really know what our parents go through, especially back in those days, because I'm kind of up there in age. And we don't know back then how systems worked. And she did what she felt was necessary so that I would have a better life. And I was adopted by two beautiful people. And my father said that he went, him and my mother, my adopted mother, to find a little boy. And they went into the adoption agency and they keep the kids in a room and they have them looking all pretty in the room. And they went and they was walking around and they walked past, he said he walked past the crib and I grabbed his tie. So he picked me up and he said when he picked me up, he never put me down. So that's how my story began with my father and my adoptive mom.
Oh,
And so years went by and in my family, like there was rumors circulating and some of my family were not nice to me at all. I want to tell you.
mm,
Oh, she's not really one of our family. She's adopted because people hear things, children hear things, they talk.
right.
And when they talk, they don't realize that kids hear things. And
Right.
my little cousins and them would hear things, and not all of them, because some of them was, they was really nice to me, but there was some that wasn't so nice,
Right.
and including some family members. I
Mm,
had a situation where one of my aunts, which is my father's sister, she actually told me one day she wanted me to come stay there with my cousins. It was on my birthday. I'll never forget this. And
mm-hmm.
I had a big birthday party at my dad's house. And she said, why don't you come stay with your cousins tonight? They're staying at my house, which was her grandchildren. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to go. I wanted to stay home. And so my cousins begged me, so I went and everything. And then, when I got there the next morning, breakfast was being served. So I went to go brush my teeth and everything. I get to the table and my cousins was looking at me kind of weird, but I sat down, because I was very respectful. I sat down and was ready to say my prayer and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And my cousin was like, why they called me Melinda at the time, why Melinda doesn't have as much food as I do? And I didn't pay attention. I looked and sure enough, like everybody had so much food on their plate but me. And so my cousin immediately took my plate and was giving me some food off of his plate.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh.
it took my appetite because I knew right then and there that she was being vindictive, even as a young
Mm-hmm.
child. You know what I'm saying? So to back that up, wow. Anyway, to back that up, that was one of the situations that happened in my family. When you're adopted, these are the things you deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my mother, adoptive mother, she ended up passing away when I was 7.
Oh,
She
wow.
had diabetes and went into a diabetic coma.
Oh.
And I I didn't know what was going on at the time, but I woke up and I was like, I asked my father, I said, why you didn't wake me up for school? And he was like, your mom was sleeping. And I said, okay. And I ran in the room and I was like, okay, she's asleep, but she wasn't there. And he said, no. And tears was running down his face. And I never seen my father cry ever. I never saw him cry. And he was like, no, she's gone. She's gone, she's dead. And
Mm-hmm.
I just stood there because I didn't even know how or really what death meant. You know, I didn't
Mm.
know that that was going to mean that I would never ever see her again. I didn't know that that was something that was so hurtful that my father was crying like that.
Right.
So anyway, she passed away, and now this is when I find out that I'm adopted, because all this time I never knew. They
Mm.
never told me anything. I'm 7 years old, and now this man has to explain to me that
Mm.
he's not, my mother's not my real mother.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
Um, so he says to me, he says, I need to talk to you about something. And he says, I don't know how to really explain this to you, but I'm gonna explain it to you the best way I can. He says, Mommy's gone and she's not coming back. He says, but she was not your real mom. And I was looking at him, I said, she's not my real mom. He said, no, she wasn't your real mom. He
Mm.
says, your mom that had you, she gave you to me. And
Mm.
I said, he said, but I want to ask you a question. He said, do you want to stay with me? I said, yes. I said, you're my dad. And I
Mm.
said, I want mommy to come back, because I didn't understand. I didn't get the
Right.
concept.
Right.
So after the funeral and everything happened, he kind of simmered that down with that issue for a while. I guess he had to talk to my aunts and them, which is my adoptive mother's sister, and
Mm.
try to get me to understand exactly what he was talking about, because now he has to go through the foster care agency to keep me.
Really. Mm.
So
Wow.
he finally got into my head. By this time, I'm almost 8 years old, a little over 8. And so I got the concept of what was going on, and he ended up adopting me. He was
Oh.
the first man to ever adopt a child as a single parent in New York State.
Really?
So history. Yes, ma'am.
Oh
Yes,
my
ma'am. The
goodness.
first one. Not to mention he was a black man. But this is the
Wow.
kicker. He was considered to be a Caucasian man. If you look
Really?
it up, it will say Caucasian man, because on his dishonorable discharge, they had him discharged as a Caucasian, and you can't change it.
What? Is it because how he looked or like what made them?
They made a mistake on his discharge papers when he got out of the army, and
Mhm.
once he get out of the army, they can't change it.
Right, right.
It has to stay as
Wow.
permanent record. So they had him listed as a Caucasian.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
I laugh about it because even in school one day they called me in the office and asked me, "Was that my father?" They was like, "Is that man that keep coming here for you? That your father?" I said, "Yeah, that's my father." I said, "Why?" And they was like, "Because they got it listed on here as your father being a Caucasian." I said, "What's Caucasian?" I didn't even know what Caucasian was at the time.
Right. Yeah.
How do you expect a 7 or 8 year old to know what Caucasian
Right.
Caucasian is?
Right.
And they all knew my father. They loved my father. They just was bottled because my record said one thing, and they knew this man was coming in, and they knew he was dark skinned, very dark. Okay, he's
Oh,
from the islands, dark skin, jet black hair, wavy hair, beautiful, handsome
wow.
guy, 6'5",
Right.
but he was dark, you know.
Right.
So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
That's
I
something.
mean, to this day, I laugh at that because I said, not only was I history, but even the way that he got me was so sweet. Because at the time, Yah was in it even then.
Mhm.
Even then in my life, he was there to cover me, to make sure that I had decent parents. Because there's some horror stories, I tell you,
Right.
that transpired prior. And
Right.
I must have been like maybe 4 years old, and my
Mhm.
mom and dad was working, and my stepsister, she would come there to stay with us. That's my father's daughter.
Mhm.
And she would have guys come over,
Mhm.
and they was in the room. I had a bunk bed, and she would come in my room literally and have sex with these guys in the room. When she
With
would
you in
go
the
out,
room.
yes, have
Really?
sex in the room, she put me on the top bed while she's down in the bottom bed, having sex with these guys. And soon as she walked out the room, whatever guy she's with, they would come and they're touching on me and fumbling me and
What?
doing stuff to me. I'm 4 years old now. I remember this.
Wow.
4 years old. And then she would literally suffocate me with a pillow till I pee on myself if I told.
Really? So she knew. She knew what they were
She
doing.
she knew after a while because I would tell her that he
Mm.
hurt me or he touched me, and she would take a pillow and put it over my face to the point where I urinated on myself. And
Oh,
one day,
goodness.
my biological mom, I mean, not my biological mom, may she rest in peace. My
Mhm.
adopted mom went to my father and said something is wrong. And
Mm.
he said, "What do you mean?" She said, every time I put her sweater or shirt over her head, she's going crazy. She's like crying and screaming, and she won't let me put her shirt on. Something's wrong. And she's
Mhm.
only doing this after, my sister's there or comes
Right.
to visit. And
Mhm.
so one day it just so happened that she was there watching me, and my mother was at work, and my father, he made an errand or something, running somewhere. And again, she has this guy come over, and she makes me take off all my clothes. Well, my clothes from the bottom part. She makes me take my clothes off. And I'm on the top bed, and she's down in the bed. Now, this time she's in the room, and my father pulls up. I could hear him. I could hear him pulling the car up in the driveway, but she's so busy doing what she's doing, she did not pay it no attention.
Mm.
Meanwhile, my father's coming through the door. She's trying to hurry up and get her clothes on. The
Mm.
guy's trying to hurry up and get his clothes on. She couldn't get mine on fast enough. My
Mm.
father comes through the door, and he's calling out for me. He's calling her. And now she's trying to put my clothes on. But again, she didn't do it fast enough, and he caught her.
Mhm.
He
Mm.
caught her.
How old
And
was she, sis?
how old was
Like
I by then?
what her your sister, like how what was her age around that
She
time?
was she was 18.
Oh my goodness.
She was 18. Yeah. And this
Mm.
had been going on for a while.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So she knew better.
So
Mhm.
so it was like really hurtful, to as a little girl, um I didn't comprehend really what was going on. They didn't penetrate me, with their penis or anything like that, but they
Right.
were fumbling and touching on me to the point
Right.
where it was hurting me, and she was abusing me by, hurting me with this pillow or smacking on me and stuff like that, just being really abusive. That's how that's the only way I could put it, is being very abuseful to the point where it was messing with me. I was urinating on myself. I was doing stuff that my mom knew something was wrong. She knew seriously something was wrong. And it
Right.
just so happened that my father caught it. And he when he had to tell my mom, they barred her from the house. She couldn't come back to the house anymore. As a matter of
Right.
fact, I didn't
Wow.
have any communications with her until I was almost 18 years old.
Wow.
And that's
Mm.
because I wanted to have communications with my niece and nephew. But
Mm.
it messed me up even growing up, getting older. As I got, like, I was about maybe 13 or 14 years old, and I started, kind of rebellion. I was going to church and stuff, and that was another thing. I was going to church
Mhm.
because that was something that I really wanted to do. My father kind of like, he didn't make me feel like I had to go and force it on me like other parents did. It was
Right.
open for me to go, and I enjoyed going, so I would go because that
Mhm.
was a way for me to meet other children, and I liked the environment at first. But
Right.
then all of a sudden it became something like, well, if you don't go, or if you don't, participate in whatever they were doing, and this wasn't from my father, this was from the congregation, it was
Mm.
like you were a bad person. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
I didn't like that. And I
Right.
told my father that. I had a very good, open relationship with my dad. And
Awesome.
he kept it that way, especially after what happened. He made sure, after my
Mm.
mother passed away, after the situation, he made sure he kept very close contact with me and
Wow.
how I felt. He made sure that, look, if there's anything that happens to you or anybody says anything to you, you immediately come to me, and you fake it if you have to, but you come and let me know what's going on. Don't let them tell you oh, they're going to hurt me or this, that, and the other. You come to me whenever you feel it's safe for you to come and talk to me, and you let me know what's going on. He was
Wow.
my first dance. He was my first dance. He was
Oh
the
my
first one to open the
goodness.
door for me. He was a perfect gentleman to me. He was. He
God
was
bless
so
you.
wonderful to me. The matter of fact, that song, Luther Vandross song, every time I hear that, I would cry. Dance
The
with my father.
dancer. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I would hear
Mm-hmm.
that, I would bawl. Like right now, if I heard that, I would just tears would just
Oh,
run down my face because he was my knight in shining armor. That man was so beautiful as a person. I didn't even know until after he had passed away that he was the one that was giving money to people in the community because he was well to do. He had a good job. He
mm.
was a nurse and a beautician. He had his
Wow.
own beauty, and so he had money. We didn't
Right.
really work for anything. And he had a couple rentals, so in that aspect we were good.
Right.
You know, we were good, and he tried to make sure that I was comfortable in my own skin. So
Mm.
I remember getting my first job, and they had like summer jobs at the time. I don't know if you remember that, but they had
Mhm.
summer jobs back
Oh, yeah.
then. And so I had a summer job, and I had to get on the South Ferry. I lived in New York,
Okay.
and I had to get on the ferry to get where I had to go to my job. And there was this guy, and I would run into him, and I didn't know at the time that he was Israelite. And I was studying to be a 5%er. I was trying to get away from that Christian church Baptist stuff going on. And at this time, that's when Malcolm X was out, and Muhammad was going around, and every corner you see bean pies and
Mm.
newspapers
Right.
getting
Right.
out.
Right.
So, so I was curious. I'm a teenager now, and I'm,
Right.
trying to find my way in life. So I was, literally out there listening to this one and that one and what was going on in the world about different religions and ways of life when it
Right.
came to spirituality. That was really intriguing to me. And one of my major subjects was social studies. So working with
Mm.
people and stuff was what I love to do. So my
Mm.
first job was working at the stock exchange in New York. And so I would have to take the ferry to get there. And to make a long story short, this man would he would teach me different things. And he would tell me, he said one day, because he heard one of the brothers talking to me, he said, sister, why would you want to be 5% of something when you could be 99.9% of something? He said, and he started telling me, he's like, do you know where you come from? Do you know who you are? Just different things. And I look about this now because at that time, it just seemed like somebody just teaching me different things. And I had mad respect for him because every time he seen me and a couple other young people, he would tell us things. And
Right.
so I really learned a lot from him as far as, being Black in America and who and where we really originally came from, and about
Mm.
slavery and different things that they didn't teach you in school.
Right.
Like
Right.
Christopher Columbus, no, he's not the one who, just different
Right. All of
things.
that. Mm-hmm.
Right. And how Christianity basically, why you don't be comfortable in there because a lot of the stuff they're telling you is not truthful. He
Right.
told me, he said, the original Bible, I believe at that time he told me was locked up in Fort Knox somewhere or something like that to that effect. He was like, the original Bible is not where we can read it. And if we were to be able to have access to it, this whole world would be different.
Mm.
That's what he told me. You know? Yeah,
Mm.
so it was interesting, and what I was saying was that I started to start smelling myself. I started wanting to experiment with things. My cousins and them was smoking weed and drinking. So one day they gave me some and I tried it. I really didn't like it the first time. I didn't like it. But then one day, it was like a house party they had, and I tried it again. And by this time, I'm like 15 years old and I'm trying to experiment with it. And sure enough, I liked it. And I started
Mm.
drinking. I started drinking and started, basically. it would just be on a weekend type of thing. I would just do it. Then it started spilling into when I was at school. And I went to, because at this time they had everybody busing out to the white schools. So I couldn't go to the high school in my area, I had to go be bussed out to the white area. And I went to school one day and we were sitting outside and a truck pulled up and it was all these Ku Klux Klans in the truck. They jumped out, they started hitting the kids, beating all the black kids up, I mean, tearing them. I ran into school and I ran to the principal's office and I ran under the principal's desk. The principal was already running outside, I guess, to see what was going on, but I ran into the principal's desk and I would not leave from under that desk until my dad came up there and got me, literally. They tried to get me. I was like, I'm not going nowhere till my father comes and get me. Period.
Wow.
Meanwhile, a couple of my friends, they got hurt, seriously hurt. Some people was really so bad hurt that they had to go to the hospital. And then I stayed home that next day. The following day, I went back to school. And on the way coming home from school, they jumped on the bus. They got on the bus and these white kids was on the bus beating up black kids left and right. And it just spilled over into the neighborhood. So now all the people in my neighborhood, they're beating up every white person that they see. It just got racially aggravated. It was just terrible at this time, especially where I lived at in New York. And it got to the point where, people were scared to come out, scared to go to school, scared to do a lot of things in that neighborhood because of all the things that was going on. And I just got irritated and frustrated to the point where I was smoking weed a lot, and it got to the point where my dad was like, look, you're going to have to stop doing this because it's affecting your schoolwork for one and who you are. You're not acting yourself, and so he sent me to Bermuda. I had to go to Bermuda. I stayed there for, I think, 6 to 7 months that I stayed in Bermuda at his family's house. And I got myself together, and then he let me come back. He wouldn't let me come back till I got myself together. And there, it's totally different. Totally different.
Really?
They were, I think it was 7 Day Advantage or something, and they didn't eat pork. They didn't even eat meat. Everything was vegetarian this and vegetarian that. So I got myself together really quick, so I could get back home to my dad. I just couldn't deal with it. It just got kind of frustrating. So sis, as I got older, I started rebellion and smoking weed and drinking because now I wanted to find my mother. And I would pray to Yah like every day, like, please let me find my biological mother. I would be around my girlfriends and they had their mothers around, and I wanted to know who I looked like, and I was basically calling their mother my mother. It was just getting to me to the point where it was affecting me as a person because I really didn't know who my and where my background was. And I kept feeling like I'm going to find her. I have to find her. I really need to find my mom. And my dad was very supportive. He just was like, look, anything I could do to help you to find her, I will help you to find her. But there was two stories going on in my family. One was that the one that I was calling my adoptive dad was really my biological father. Yeah.
Wow.
That he had a child outside of his marriage, and that when they went to go and get this child, that he already was coming to get me. And my mother, because she couldn't have any children of her own, she loved him so much. She was like, look, go get your child. I will help you raise your child. And that's the other story. And I'm going to get to that part too
Wow.
eventually.
Because I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, like this is, look, and like I said, I had to live through this stuff going through the walls through my family. Like I would hear this and I would hear that, and I would have this one acting one way and this one happen, acting another way, and one family telling me this, and so it got to the point where it was affecting me, and
Right.
I was starting to rebel, and so I end up, getting past that, I went to school and I went to college for a while, and then I just kind of like dropped out of it because I got married. I ended up getting pregnant. I got married, and
Mhm.
like everybody who gets married, they feel like that's you're going to be your forever after, and I thought so. You know,
Mm.
I had three at the time, beautiful children, and it didn't work out. It
Oh,
didn't work out.
sorry to hear that.
He
Mm.
got on drugs,
Oh.
and he got
Mm.
on crack, and that's when crack really just really got out in New York, and
Mm.
he became abusive. So, and when
Mm.
I say abusive, in I didn't really see it coming
Mm.
because I didn't know that he was using crack. He would drink beer, he
Wow.
would watch the game on the weekends, and that was his thing. And it didn't
Right.
bother me, you know, it didn't bother me at all. There were times that he had drink and he got a little, you know, mouthy and stuff like that, but never to the point where he would put his hands on me. But then he started changing. And
Mm.
this one day we went out and everything, and we're at this club thing, and you know something it transpired where somebody said something to me, and he really got angry to the point where he hit the person, and it started a fight in the whole place.
Uh-oh.
And when I got home after all this happened, I get home and he starts on me. And when
Mm.
I say he started on me to the point where I got beat. He beat me.
Mm.
He took one of them stakes that you put into the ground because I've always liked to grow gardens and stuff like that and flowers. And I had
Mm.
these stakes that you put in the ground, and they're like kind of like metal rods. And he took it and beat me with it like you would beat somebody beating a child or a runaway slave or something. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Oh
Because I
my.
wasn't into beat my children. And so
Mm.
he beat me with it, and I was done. I was like so upset and so I didn't know what to do. And this is
Mm.
why I'm doing this because I don't want another sister or a brother to be hurt by another person and don't do something about it as soon as it happens. Because
Mm.
I didn't do something right away because I thought that it would stop. I thought that he would change. I thought that this was my fault.
Mm.
I thought I did something wrong. You know,
Right.
I tried to
Right.
be the perfect mother based on what I seen other mothers do. I was a textbook case because I didn't have my mother there. So I did what I thought the right mother would do, reading stories to
Right.
my children, giving them bubble, you know, doing anything that I thought a good mother was
Right.
supposed to do. So it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. And this particular time that he did this, I had to go to work the next day and I was bruised all up. And
Mm.
my coworker saw it and he was like, "Can I speak to you a minute in the office?" And he pulled me in the office, and I happened to work. I happened to work where you take care of kids in a group home setting. And
Mm.
he said, "Look," he said, "I'm not trying to get in your business or anything." He said, "But I can see that something is wrong." He said,
Mm.
"I don't want to go to our supervisor with this, but you can't work around the kids like that. You have
Mm.
bruises all over you, like you could physically see the bruises on you."
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
So he ended up, you know, he was like, "Look, I don't want to see you hurt and I don't want to get in your business, but I can't let you work on the floor." He was over me. So my supervisor ended up coming to the building where we worked at, and she had to talk to me. And she sent me home, and she said, "Look," she's like, "I'm not upset with you." She's like, "I'm more concerned with you because I don't want you to have to go through that. That's not something you should be going through, and you have children of your own." And so she
Right.
sent me home. So I had to go
Mm.
home, and I didn't want to go home. That was the last place I really
Mm.
wanted to go. But I went home.
Right.
He was at work, and I looked at myself and I was like, "What are you doing? Like, how did you even get here? How'd you get to this place that you're at right now?" You know,
Mm.
I'm not using, I'm a good mom. I have a job that's good. You know, I worked for the
Mm.
state. How
Mhm.
did you get here? How did you get to this place where you're at right now? And so
Right.
I prayed, and I prayed to Yah, I prayed. And at that time, I was praying to a God, and I was praying to Jesus, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and this is what you do in the in the Christian church. And,
Mhm.
you tell the pastor, and they're still telling you, stay with your husband. This is what you're supposed to do. And
Mm.
God's going to work it out. It's going to be okay.
Mm.
Well, it was not okay. It was not okay at
Mm.
all. The next time an incident happened, um, I was holding my baby at the time, the little baby. They were a year apart. One was 2 years old, and the other one was not quite one. And
Mhm.
um, I was pregnant and didn't know I was pregnant at the time.
Mm.
And matter of fact, I'm sorry. One was two, one was one, and I was pregnant at the time. And
Mhm.
he came in, and he was upset about something that happened at work, and he took it out on me. And he
Mm.
literally tried to grab the baby out of my arm, and I wouldn't let him. I held on to the baby, and I put the baby in the crib. And he took
Mm.
and he hit me, and I fell and hit my head on the dresser.
Oh my
And I could
goodness.
feel him stomping me with his
Oh my
boots.
good. What?
Okay. I'm down, and I could feel him stomping me with his boots.
Oh
And
my
my
goodness.
oldest son, he at the time was 5, he ran all the way to my father's house and got my father
Mm.
and my brother. By this time, my husband left, just left the house. I'm laid out, passed out. The babies are in the house, and he just left because
Mm.
he knew that my son ran out there to get my father. And
Mm.
so my father and them got there. The next thing I know, I woke up, I was in the hospital. I had a concussion.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh my
The
goodness.
concussion. And the baby that was in my stomach was fine. The baby was fine and everything. And
Mm.
I
Goodness.
made a choice at that point that I had to separate from him.
Mm.
I couldn't stay in that
Right.
type of relationship. I couldn't stay in that type of environment. And
Mhm.
so I I didn't want him to know at first because I knew that it would make him lash out at me, or come after me or whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. So I did it where my coworker and another person, a friend of mine, helped me. And I came in there one day with my dad, and I took and packed up everything right then and there and took everything and left. And I moved to another state. I had to leave totally because there was so many things going on from that period of when he hurt me to the time when I was actually ready to leave, because I had to get up enough money to leave. I had to find a new place to relocate. In between that
Mm.
time, there was Christmas, and at that time, I celebrated Christmas, and
Mhm.
all the toys. I woke up, I had took everything that I had bought the kids and got the children, and I put it under the tree and left and went back to work because I worked 11 to 7 shift. And when I came back early that morning to make sure I was there when the kids got up, everything was gone. Everything,
Mm.
everything was gone.
Wow.
So I called my
Wow.
dad and said, Dad, I said, look, I cannot take this no more. Everything is gone. I have to leave him. I cannot stay there. And, that's how I end up where I was going. And I got them to help me to leave. So I end up leaving and moving out. And I moved to Philadelphia. And I started
Mm.
out in Philadelphia. And I hate to say this, but I end up being a single parent.
Mm.
It was hard. It was really hard because I
Right.
didn't want I didn't want to seem like a failure to my children. By this time I have 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys. And I didn't want to seem like a failure, and I didn't want to seem like I didn't have my thing together.
Right.
I didn't want my father to
Mm.
feel like he had to worry about me. He would always help
Mm.
me. Anything I needed, he would give it to me. So it was like I would try to make sure that he knew I was secured in my situation, but at the same time, I was really hurting inside. I was really
Mm.
struggling inside, trying to
Right.
raise these babies by myself.
Right.
And I did it. I ended up having like sometimes 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And
Right.
my father would come and visit, and when he come, I would have everything perfect,
Mm.
clean, kids fine, but I was living a double life. Excuse me.
Mm.
Excuse
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
I was living a double life. Um, one of the lives where I was struggling, and the other life I was perfectly fine. Everything was good and shiny and gold.
Mm.
But
Right.
it was not a good thing, because if you need help, you should always try to seek help. But my
Mm.
pride got in the way. And
Mm.
sometimes pride can be your worst enemy. And in this
Mm.
case, it was my worst enemy,
Mm.
because I didn't know it, but soon another life turn was about to hit me. My
Mm.
father came to take my children to this camp that was in New York that they would go to. And
Mhm.
he came, and I got the kids ready, and he spent the night because it took me long to get the girls' hair done. And he took them, and this was on a Friday. He took them that Saturday morning. He left and took them back. And he said that he was going to take a trip. And before he left, he told me, he said, look, baby, he said, listen, he said, I don't want to tell you what kind of relationships to get into or anything like that. He said, but I want to tell you that every man is not like me. He said, I can
Mm.
see that you're naive and that you
Mm.
think that, every man is like me, and they're not. There are some
Mm.
guys out here that will really hurt you just
Mm.
because. It's not because you did anything.
Right. It's not healthy.
So,
Mhm.
and this is what he
Mhm.
told me. So
Right.
he left and he took the kids, and he said he was going on a trip with his girlfriend. And I got a call Sunday, well, really Monday morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And his girlfriend calls me to tell me that my father died.
Oh. Oh.
He had a heart attack.
Wow.
And
Sorry to hear that. Mm. He was a big part
that
of your life.
really, that was
Mm.
a very, very big part of my life. That was
Yeah.
my structure. That
Yeah.
was my foundation. Yah
Right.
should have been my foundation. But
Right.
at
Right.
that
Right.
time in my life, Yah was not my foundation.
Right. Right.
You know, and
Right.
because Yah was not my foundation, and because I had my father as my foundation, I fell apart.
Oh. Right.
I started drinking a little bit, not nothing like before, but I started drinking a little bit, and it just wasn't working for me. I didn't want to drink, so I stopped. I didn't drink, and
Mhm.
I decided that I had to get it together some kind of way.
Mhm.
And I tried to get myself together. I even got in some other relationships trying to have a male figure there. I just felt like a family should
Right.
always have a man and a woman to help
Mm.
raise the children. But they
Right.
were bad choices. And some of these choices I made, they were still abusive relationships. They weren't
Mm.
healthy relationships. And so I
Right.
had to move on from them. And I end up
Mm.
raising these babies by myself. And
Mm.
I end up um, deciding that uh, I should leave from Philadelphia and start anew. And so I was in a relationship that was healthy. So I thought anyway. I thought it was a
Mm.
healthy relationship. And
Mhm.
my son, my oldest son, by this time, he was like 20 years old at the time. And he was like staying with me. He said, Mom, he said, I'm gonna go and I wanted to go to my girlfriend's birthday party. It was on a Friday. And I said, fine. I said, well, I'm trying to get together so I can move. So, are you going to come back? He's like, yeah, I'm going to come back. I'm going to try to come back by Monday because I got to start this new job anyway. So long
Mm-hmm.
story short, he got into some kind of thing at a party or something and they locked him up. They locked him
Mm-hmm.
up and they kept him for I want to say 2 weeks or so. So I ended up staying and postponing me moving. Long story short, he ended up doing some time there because he refused to tell on. They got this thing about not telling stuff on the street, where we
Mm-hmm.
from the snitches get in ditches type stuff. And so he went to
Mm-hmm.
and he took the fall for it. Well, I waited and I refused to leave until he got out. So I
Mm-hmm.
waited a while and I end up was able to get myself in a better position anyway. So I stayed there. I ended up getting a job and I ended up staying a couple more years actually. I stayed a couple
Mm-hmm.
more years and I got a, a good paying job to the point where I was able to stack enough papers up to get a better, in a better position. Because when you
Right.
move, you want to be where you have enough money and stuff so that if anything happens, you can fall back on it. And I wanted to get a decent
Right.
job when I moved. So I ended up getting the paper. So when my son got out, he said he called me. It was on a Monday, and
Mm-hmm.
he had been out for maybe, I want to say maybe 2 months or so. And he was in New York, and I was in Philadelphia. And he said to me, he said, Mom, since you're moving on Saturday, I'm gonna come and I'll be there Friday. He talked to me on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So on Monday, I told him, I said, well, okay, if you're coming on Friday, that's fine because I have everything packed up. So by the time you come on Friday, Saturday, we can pull out and we can leave. And so he was
Mm-hmm.
going to ride down to North Carolina with me. I get a call on Wednesday. I get a call on Wednesday that he was shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, my daughter called me, my oldest daughter. And she's on the phone and I'm telling her, I like, calm down, it's gonna be all right. He's like, Ma, she's like, Ma, I don't think so. You need to come here now. So I'm telling the other children, I'm like, okay, so we all go to New York.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I seen him, I knew he was not fine.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he was not fine. They shot him in the
Mm-hmm.
head
Oh.
over a coat. It was over a
Oh.
coat, sis, a coat.
So sorry to hear that. Mm.
He
Mm. Mm.
let somebody, a friend of his, use a friend's coat. He borrowed it from another girl to let her have a coat because she was cold and they were in a situation where he can let her use the coat. When he went back to get the coat from the girl didn't want to
Mm.
give the coat back. And he's letting her know, like, this is not, I can't just let you have her coat. She's expecting to get her coat back. I just let you use it. They got into an
Right.
argument. And he said, well, I don't fight girls. You know what I'm saying? So he
Right.
left. Him and his friend left. They're walking away and going down. They get halfway away from there because it's a project where they live at. So from
Mm-hmm.
one building all the way down to where he got to, they pulls up. A car pulls up
Mm.
next to my son. It's her and her brothers. She goes and gets a brother to come after my son.
Oh
My
my
son wasn't a big guy.
goodness.
As a matter of fact, my younger son is actually bigger than my oldest son was. And
Mm. Mm. Mm.
they pulled up from my understanding, and the passenger confronted my son, and my son was going to fight him. The driver gets out and pulls out a sort of shotgun and shoots my son point blank.
Mm. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry to hear that. And he was just doing a kind deed by letting her borrow the jacket. Wow. Oh.
My son was born on 8/11.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter's born 8/14. It's the same age for 3 days. They're not even a year apart. And
Mm.
I had to bury him on his birthday backwards, which was 11/8, that
Mm.
I had to bury him. At this
Mm.
time,
Take your time. Mm.
at this time, I was wondering where y'all was.
Right, right,
Why did this happen?
right.
I had to stay there because we had to go to court, back and forth to court.
Mm.
I get to court, and the girl, they couldn't find her, but the guy who shot my son, he turned state evidence on her and the other guy, but he had no remorse, none whatsoever. In fact, he
Mm.
said, I would do it again.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
Ooh.
the
Was
last
he in
court
some
date,
kind of gang? Like the guy that shot him? Was it some gang activity maybe?
I don't know if he was in the gang, but I do know that he had no remorse for nothing that he
Right.
did.
Oh my.
He had no type of remorse. His parents were crying. I felt so bad for them because not only did
Oh.
my son lose his life, but they're going to lose their son's
Right.
life.
Right. Mm. Mm.
The crazy part is, I didn't go to the court date when they sentenced him because I just
Mm.
couldn't take it anymore.
Mm.
So my older kids and my kid's father and everything, they went. And do you know they gave that man 5 years for killing my son? 5 years. That was it. 5 years
Whoa.
for
What?
killing my son. Execution style is what they put in the paper.
Right.
They gave more time to the girl and the other guy than they gave to him
Oh my
because he turned
goodness.
state evidence. So whatever he told them,
Mm. 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 My goodness.
like I said, Sister Abiel, I'm doing this not only to relieve myself from the
Right.
hurt and the pain, but because I know somebody else is going through these things.
Right. Yeah.
You know, life is real. It's real.
Mm-hmm.
And unless
Right.
you have some type of foundation in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and unlike
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, we don't all have that family support that
Right.
we need or
Right.
that we want or that we desire to have.
Right.
And I'm gonna tell you, that must have been the hardest thing in my life is to
Well, I
bury
bet.
my baby.
I bet. I bet.
And I did, me, his father, and his sister did his body.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't, we didn't, we just couldn't like believe it at first. Like we even had to go through this, but it was a long process. And I couldn't even mourn like I wanted to because I had to try to be strong for my children. And
Right.
I went through all that stuff to get the funeral together because we didn't have insurance
Mm-hmm.
or anything for him. But
Mm-hmm.
thank thank y'all for his father and
Mm-hmm.
his wife. They did most of that financial stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
we pulled together despite the fact that we weren't together. We pulled together to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that my son had a good going home.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
pulled together and we got that done. And then it's time for me to move on. So I move on. And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the point where I'm moving to North Carolina where I don't know
Mm-hmm.
anybody,
Right.
anybody.
Right.
And I thought and felt like it was a good thing because I didn't want to be around anybody. I was
Right.
isolating myself. I didn't really
Mm.
want to talk to people, but the person that I was with, they had a big family and they were a very close family. Like they would have all kinds of togethers and gatherings. And we moved, it was on what they call Thanksgiving Day.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, I didn't celebrate anyway. I had stopped like a year
Mm-hmm.
before that celebrating pagan holidays and stuff.
Oh
And so
wow.
they, we moved actually on Thanksgiving Day. And by the time we got down there, because it took us, like maybe 8 hours to get down there. So it was still Thanksgiving Day. And, they want us to come there for Thanksgiving. And I didn't want to go.
Mm.
I said, I told them, you can go if you want, but I don't want to go.
Right.
So we didn't go, I stayed there and just unpacked stuff and got myself situated. But making a long story short, I ended up getting myself um a job down there working for the correction department down here. It took me about 3 or 4 months to get the job because you have to be screened and you have to go through training and everything.
Right.
Still, I'm not wanting my son. I'm just
Mm.
immediately getting into a job, getting into a
Mm-hmm.
house, and
Mm-hmm.
just basically trying to get used to being in a different environment because I'm going from the city now to a country area, totally a country
Right.
area. And
Mm.
I'm sitting there and I'm working this job and thinking I'm doing everything right and doing it, the best I can. And I
Mm-hmm.
decided that I would just keep my feelings to myself. You know,
Mm.
even though I felt the hurt and the pain still of my son, I would try to kind of hide it. But there would be times when I would get up in the middle of the night and like one incident, I went into the bathroom and I noticed that when I looked in the mirror, I did not see myself, Sister Abiel. I saw my
Mm.
son. I did not see myself. But I was too scared to tell
Mm.
anybody that I was having these situations and things
Mm.
happening, not
Right.
realizing that mentally I'm breaking down, but I
Mm.
didn't know that at that time.
Right.
So I'm working and now I'm about, I want to say a year into this whole situation with my son being killed and
Mm-hmm.
me with the job and moving. And this inmate decides that he likes me. And
Mm.
so he brings me a game because in order for them to get a game, they have to give you the ID. He gives me the
Mm-hmm.
ID and he takes the game, he brings the game back. And when he gives me the game, I noticed a piece of paper dropped on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I gave him back his ID, but I wrote it down. You have to write their name down. And I noticed who gave it to me. So when I picked the paper up, I knew who gave me the game and who the paper belonged to. And it was
Right.
this Mexican guy. And so I read the letter, and when I read the letter, I almost threw up, literally, from what it said. It was so
Oh,
intense and so graphic. So I called my
really?
supervisor. My supervisor comes and immediately they lock him up and put him in segregation. So they put him in
Wow.
segregation and everything. And this is when they stopped having them smoke cigarettes here in these prisons in North Carolina. So I switched my shift from day shift to night shift because I was warned to do so by another
Mm.
inmate. They're like,
Whoa.
officer, they're like, officer such and such, I suggest that you get off this ship. I'm telling you this because we don't want to see you get hurt. Basically, is
Oh
what they told me.
my. Wow.
And I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. Those
Mm-hmm.
inmates had more love for me than some of the people I worked with. That's how
Mm.
bad it was inside those walls. So
Mm.
I ended up switching my shift. And this one day, this must have been about maybe 2 or 3 months after this happened. Now I'm thinking that this inmate is going and everything's good with this stuff, and I'm working another shift. And I go and make my rounds one day, and I go inside. And it was kind of weird because once I got inside, and these are dorms, they're not like individual cells. I go in there and I'm like looking around, I'm checking the inmates and everything, and I could feel somebody behind me. Like I had this sense like somebody was near me. So I turned around, and this inmate, the same inmate, was right behind me.
Really?
Right behind me. I'm like,
Oh my
oh my goodness. This is
goodness.
what I'm saying to myself. So I turned around and I'm trying to let him know, like, I'm not scared or anything. Like, what, you're too close to me. You're in my space. What do you want? And get back up some.
Right.
So now I'm noticing that I'm a little looking for the guard, that's supposed to be watching over me. And I'm looking around, just observing everything, trying to get an idea and a feel of what's going to happen next. Because this
Mm-hmm.
inmate has he has 2 life terms. So he
Oh
don't
my.
care what he
He
do to
don't
me.
care.
He
Right.
doesn't care what he does to me. So
Mm.
now he's like, officer, I loved you. Why'd you send me to SAG and blah, blah, blah. And I could feel the intensity in my body that this man is going to make this move. And sure enough, no
Mm-hmm.
sooner than I said it, he jumped on me and I fell over this table. I was inching myself by the table and close to where I was at to have room, because where he was at and where I was at was close to the beds, because I was making my rounds next to the inmates' beds. But
Right.
in the same time, I'm actually moving myself to a different position than where I was standing at. So when he
Right.
jumped me, I fell over the table and fell on the floor, back first. Because they teach you how, you're supposed to. I fell on my back, and when I fell on my back, I hit the leg of a chair, like the leg of the table, and everything in there is metal,
Mm-hmm.
concrete, and everything else. And this inmate
Right.
that heard everything, he was a Muslim brother. He heard everything, and he got up and grabbed him off of me.
Ooh.
Who knows what he would have did?
Goodness.
By this time
Right.
now, my sergeant
Lord.
and all the people are running in to, intervene and everything else. And I just was so glad to get up out of there.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I got After I did my incident report, I left and I was so upset. And even my captain that was on that day was upset, because they was like, that person shouldn't even have been still there in
Right.
that compound. He should have been shipped out.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after this
Yes.
happened, and he would say somehow the system broke down and it didn't work. Okay.
Mm.
And so I end up really, um, I guess you would say, in shock. I was in shock.
Right. Of course.
And when the doctors checked me out and everything, they kept saying over and over again, like, you okay now? You can go back to work. You know, I was out for maybe 3 months or so. They was like, you physically fit now. You can go back to work. And I kept making excuses to why I couldn't go. But I was really hurt. Like, I was hurt, but not to the point where, they're saying I couldn't go back. But
Right.
physically and mentally, I could not go back. Like, my
Right.
mental
Right.
status was like to the point where I was afraid to go back. I did not want to go back. So I
Can
ended up not
understand that.
going back. And after 6 months, my thing ran out where I couldn't get no insurance, so I couldn't get no medicine for my pain. I couldn't go
Mm.
see the psychiatrist that they had me seeing. I couldn't get
Mm.
nothing. And then the money ran out. So now
Mm.
I have no money, nothing coming out. And I even filed for a long-term disability, but that didn't work either, because that takes time to go through. And
Right.
so they were trying to give me an extension and everything. And I just was to the point where I couldn't take it and started smoking weed again. I started smoking
Mm.
weed to try to ease the pain, self-meditating myself. And I
Right.
was smoking day in, from the time I got up to the time I was going to sleep. I was smoking.
Mm. Wow.
Smoking, smoking,
Wow.
smoking. I end up getting into a relationship with somebody I thought was a good person, and they was very helpful. Trying to keep me grounded, and trying to keep me going to my appointments, trying to help me any way they could financially.
Mm-hmm.
And after I didn't get my medication like I was supposed to, and the pain got worse, and my mental status got worse. And the more my children were demanding for me to be a strong, solid person, the weaker I was getting. To the point where
Mm.
one night I had already smoked weed, and the guy that I was with, he had went to sleep, and I had a 45, I had a 38, a 22, and I always kept them in my shed. I never kept them in the house.
Mm.
But he said he woke up because he heard a clicking sound. And
Mm.
he said he woke up and I was playing Russian roulette. When he called my name, he said he called me a couple of times and I didn't answer. So he said he called me and he was trying to get me from doing what I was doing without, alarming me at the same time. Well, when he finally got the gun out of my hand, I was at the last chamber. There was a bullet still in the chamber. Had
Oh
I took
my.
another clip, I would have blew my brains totally
Oh
out.
my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And I had
Oh
no
my
recollection of
goodness.
none of that.
So
None of
when
that.
it was happening, you didn't even know that it was happening.
No,
Really?
nope. I
Oh
didn't even
my
know it was happening. I was so
goodness.
mentally messed up that
Oh
I didn't
my.
even remember bringing a gun in the house. I didn't even
Wow.
remember doing it. See, I had like this fascination with weapons. I loved weapons. I was trained to use
Mm.
them. I was good at using them. So
Mm.
I never would bring one in the house with children, first of all. I would never
Mm.
do that, you know?
Right.
So um I'm saying this because you never know at what point is your breaking point.
Right.
I didn't know that
Right.
I had a breaking point. I didn't know
Mm.
that I had a problem.
Mm.
I thought I was perfectly fine. I was going to church every
Mm.
Sunday. I was going to church. But I
Wow.
would go in church and I would come out the same way I went in. I would hear
Mm.
them preaching and it would fly past me.
Mm. Mm.
I
Right.
paid my tithes every Sunday. I would
Wow.
go up and get prayers over me, never
Mm.
realizing that none of that stuff was doing anything for my spirit and my soul at all.
Wow. Mm.
They would sit
Mm.
up there and shake my hand and tell me they love me in church, and I would see these same people in the street and they wouldn't even speak.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Chri-
Mm.
the Christian people,
Mhm. Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
The Christian people, my
Mm.
Christian people. They ain't
Mhm.
my Christian
Mhm.
people, but the Christian people.
Right. Right.
And
Right. Right. Right.
I'm not speaking for every Christian person saying that
Right.
every Christian person is a bad person, but I am
Right.
saying they live a lie. They live a lie, and I live
Mm.
that lie with them,
Mhm.
so I know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I
Right.
lived it.
Any of us.
I was
Any
right
people.
there and looking for the love and the compassion that I didn't
Mhm.
get because I was living a lie.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I ended up getting some help. I was seeing a psychiatrist, the same psychiatrist that I see today.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
realized that at this point now that I needed to get help, that something was wrong.
Mm. Right.
And so I sought help and I got help. Um, and I thought everything was going well. And so this happened, I want to say this happened August.
Mhm.
And the person that I was with, who I assumed was a good person and everything, they were good to me and my children.
Mhm.
I thought they were a good person and everything. And um, it was January now, and there was
Mhm.
a knock on the door at 7 something in the morning. And I had just told the person to go and take my older daughter, because she lived not far from me in the next county, to take her back to where she lived at for me. And he was like procrastinating. I kept telling him to go ahead while it was early before, the kids got up and so on and so
Mhm.
on. But the kids didn't have school that day. It was on a Friday, and it was one of the coldest days of the year in January. January
Mm.
27th, I think I will never ever forget this day.
Mm.
And they were just banging on the door. And I'm like, what? Who is banging on this door like this? And
Right.
so when I opened up the door, There was a bunch of, I mean, army type weapons in my face.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I could see from my side, from my training, that there's a whole bunch of other ones. There's a bunch of cops
Mm.
around my house,
Right.
surrounding my house. Yes. And I'm like, who do you want? So
Mm.
they asked for my boyfriend. And
Right.
I went in there, I said, yo, you need to come out here because there's a bunch of cops out here surrounding my house.
Right.
And so at the same time, they tell this one officer, she tells me to step outside on the porch, and she's over there, she's like coming on me like she's trying to arrest. I said, ma'am, what are you doing? I said, I work the same people you work for. Why are you sitting here like you about to lock me up? And she
Right.
said, just give me here for a minute. I said, no. I said, why are you trying to put handcuffs on me? And she wouldn't
Right.
tell me. I said, listen, can you let me just go put some clothes on? Because I hadn't even got my clothes on or nothing. I said, can you at least let me go inside and put some clothes on? And while I go in there in my room, they're going through my dresser, they're going through my stuff. And I'm looking
Mm.
now I'm really looking stupid. Like, what the heck is going
Right.
on? They
Right.
have him locked up in a hurry. They already took him out. And I said, can you please tell me what's going on? They said, do you have any weapons here? Do you have this here? I said, no, all I have is some bullets. And they went and took the bullets and they took my the thing that you put the bullets in. I can't even think now, but the thing that you put
Mm-hmm.
the bullets in, they took that
Mm-hmm.
and they let me put clothes on and they locked me up. Took me to
Really?
the yes, locked me
Didn't even
up.
tell
See,
you for what. They just
they
locked
would
you up.
not tell me nothing. The whole ride
Mm.
there, they didn't tell me anything. When I
Wow.
finally got processed and everything and got to where we were at in the courtroom and the judge finally told me why I was there, I looked over at the person that I had been dealing with, and I don't think it was a good look, sis. I can tell you right
Mm.
now, it
Right.
was not a good look that I had. They had got
Mm.
me for aiding, abetting sales of a weapon because he had took my
Mm.
weapons and sold them to an undercover informant.
Oh my goodness. Mm. Mm. Mm.
So
Wow.
the judge tells me what happens and tells me that I need to have a gag order. I'm not to say nothing to anybody and I'm not to have any contact with him. And I'm like, okay. And now I'm looking at him like, what in the world did you do and why?
Mm.
Okay.
Right.
And I remember him telling me, like, I need to get rid of the weapons. And I remember him telling me that I could sell them, this, that, and the other, but not that you were going to do that.
Right.
Or not that you
Right.
were going to sell them to a person on the street as opposed to
Right.
a gun shop or whatever. And
Right.
so that was just a whole another thing. And now I'm
Mm.
scared to death. I had a parking ticket and I
Mm.
was upset about a parking ticket.
Right.
I never been in trouble a day in my life.
Right.
Now I'm in trouble, deep trouble. And I have these
Mm.
babies and I'm scared that these babies are going to be taken
Right.
away from me. Now
Oh
I got
my
to call and
goodness.
tell their father what happened. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like,
Mm.
that's not going to end
Wow.
well. Like this, it's
Right.
a good thing that me and him had a good relationship, even though when we were married together, because we were married in Islam, even though we were married and we didn't get along
Mm.
when we were married like that, we had a good relationship and we were good co-parenting, but I was still single on my own with them. So I didn't
Right.
want to really make it look bad and tell him no lies or anything because I knew he was the only person that was going to be able to help me if they were going to try to take my kids.
Right.
I can't lie to
Right.
this man and tell him nothing about his children. I can't lie to him about this situation because now who am I going to have to help me? I'm in a town where I don't really even know anybody but my church family.
Right.
Sis, it was the
Mm.
worst time ever.
Mm.
Like,
I
I
bet.
can't even explain how bad
Mm.
and awful I felt to the point where I was just weak on the legs. Now,
Mm.
I had a habit of smoking weed. After 25 years of being clean, I'm smoking marijuana like a
Wow.
chimney. I mean, from the time I get up to the time I went to sleep, I was smoking.
Right.
And so this is how they were able to do that, because I really wasn't in my right state of mind like that. Like if I did, I wouldn't have let that happen.
Right.
In the whole situation with me even trying to put myself in danger with this gun wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So I just was like, where is this going to take me now? Like, you really got yourself in a real bad situation. I
Mm.
had no choice but to drop to my knees.
Hmm.
I dropped to my knees and I called on the Father.
Mm-hmm.
I said,
Mm.
please get me out of this.
Mm.
Please, because I don't know what else to do. I don't know
Right.
what else to do but pray. So I prayed
Mm.
on the situation, and I end up getting on house arrest. They didn't When I went back to court the next day, because I had to go back the next day, see a PO and this, that, and the other, they put me on house arrest. And
Mm.
being on house arrest and having to admit that I did something so careless and so reckless,
Mm.
I end up having a nervous breakdown.
Mm.
I had a
Mm.
nervous breakdown.
Mm.
I can remember um, sitting in my living room and telling my daughter, my older daughter, she
Mm.
must have been about 25 at the time, or 26 at the time. And I said, I don't feel right. I
Mm.
said, I don't feel right. And I feel like somebody's coming after me every time I go around a corner. I felt like that inmate was going to be there, and I was
Mm.
scared. I was scared for my life. I was scared for my children's life. And
Mm.
she was like, Ma, but you're fine. You're here. Nobody's going to hurt you. And I was like, yes, they're going to hurt me, you know?
Mm.
And she was like, she knew something was wrong. She knew something was wrong.
Right.
So she
Right.
called my therapist and they sent me to the hospital. Well, they
Mm.
gave me all this medication and put me on this, that, and the other. And
Mm-hmm.
my therapist, she took me there because I was on house arrest. I had no way to drive myself there. And my PO was a real, like, by the book type of person. And he didn't
Mm.
care how and what, he didn't care about none of that. He ended up telling me, get there the best way you can, but
Mm.
make sure you get there. If you need help, get there,
Mm.
but get there the best way you can. But my therapist had a heart. She came and got me. She
Mm.
took me there. And when she came to pick me up after I was there for 10 days, 10 days,
Mm.
they was giving me so many pills, I couldn't keep up with them. But I started um, taking the pills that they were giving me and putting them in an envelope. I would keep them, a napkin in my hand, and acting like I was taking them because I could feel myself so drugged up that I
Mm.
didn't even know who I was anymore.
Right.
And so when she came to get me, I had took them and hid them in a pair of my panties. I hid them in a pair of my panties because they would do checks in the room, and
Right.
they didn't check my panties for some reason. They didn't check my panties, so I put them in my
Right.
panties.
Right.
And she came and got me this the same day she came and got me. I took him and put him away, and she said, look at how much weight you lost. She's like, you look terrible. What did they give you? This is what she's saying to me. And I wouldn't hardly talk to her on the ride. And I can remember her kept saying to me, are you okay? Are you okay? And so she took me to a house. And at the time, I didn't realize it was my house. And these
Mm.
people were
Wow.
coming around me. I didn't realize that they were my children.
Oh
It took
wow.
me about,
Oh wow.
I want to say 2 weeks before I realized that
Mm.
they were my children and that I was home. I
Wow.
ended up with, they call it amnesia, like a short-term amnesia, where
Right.
all the stress and the trauma and the medication, all that stuff
Mm.
just wiped me clean. It was my
Mm.
my therapist tells me now that it was my way of protecting myself, is to
Mm.
wipe that memory and the bad things out,
Mm.
you
Right.
know?
Right.
And I say this and tell people this story because
Mm.
mental illness is real.
Yes.
It's real. This
It
is what leads
is.
people to drugs. This is what leads people to
Mm-hmm.
doing hurtful things like suicide and
Mm.
hurting their children, or allowing somebody to abuse them, or
Right.
even making decisions to be in the wrong type of religion because they want to
Mm.
people please. They want to belong to some
Mm.
type of organization. So they go
Mm.
to these churches and they want to belong there because their family's there, or because they feel like that's where they
Mm.
belong, and that this God that they're
Very true.
serving is going to help them. It's going to make them
Right.
do.
Mm.
No.
Very true. What you're
So
saying.
as my story
Mm.
goes on, I end up going to this place called A Plus to help me with my drug abuse and to get my mental health back together. I went
Mm.
there for 6 years straight, never missed a day.
Wow.
I made sure I kept all my appointments. I wanted
Awesome.
my life back. I wanted my life back, and I wanted to show my children that regardless at the end of the day, things will happen to you, but if you
Mm-hmm.
believe in the Most High and if you serve the Most High the way you're supposed to, even though I was calling out the wrong name, my
Mm-hmm.
heart was in the right place. And my Father in heaven knew where my heart was at because He already wrote it in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So every day I came home, I read, I prayed, I fast. I hardly ever watched TV. I hardly did
Mm.
anything but pray and fast and went to this program. I end up
Mm.
working for them and being a facilitator for the clients and also for the county. I started being a facilitator for 12 steps. I started running a program
Mm.
for 12 steps in the community, and
Go ahead.
it was for any kind of addiction. It didn't matter if it was sex addiction, food addiction. You can come to this
Wow.
program. Once a month we had what we called breaking of the bread, where we would come together as a group and I would feed them out of my pocket. I would feed them, and
Mm.
this is a way that they could bring their children with them, and we would communicate
Mm.
as a community and help with whatever issues they had to go on. And
Right.
I would always make sure that we prayed and that we were spiritually bound. So the program was based on spirituality. It wasn't just based on the traditional 12 steps. So
Right.
our program was spiritually bound. So you had the higher power, you had the most high, and you had to understand that we were here for a common cause, and that was to better ourselves.
Right.
So after I
Right.
did that, I decided to also be the person that would be the after hour on call person. And since my house was so
Mm.
big, I used to call it the West Wing. I had a place where if people were abused or women and they need a place to go, the crisis team would bring them, they would come to me and they would stay with me until the crisis team would come and place them wherever they had to go, just so that they
Mm.
would be out of danger. So I did that for a
Right.
while, but it would only be women. I didn't take men, just women,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
women
Right.
with children. I did that for a while until I built up my esteem, got myself back in alignment with who I was and where I
Mm.
was going, because I wanted to get myself back in position to where I
Mm.
was functionable, because I was to the point where I was losing out on life and what the
Mm.
Father had for me to do. And
Right.
the church that I was attending at that time, I started doing different things with them, and just stuff that I would do community based. And that's when I met my sister. She was one of the people that had reached out to me, and she had called me one day and she said she had a seizure, and I was like, a seizure? She's like, yeah, I think I had a seizure or something, and I hurt my face, and my mouth is bleeding. I said, okay, well, I'm gonna send somebody to get you. So I sent somebody up there. I paid them to go and get her. She lived in a county over, a couple counties over from where we were at, and I got
Mm-hmm.
her. And I said, after she told me her story and what was going on, I said, I think it would be best if you come and stay with me for a while, and I'll
Mm.
try to help you to try to get yourself back together and try to deal with your anger
Mm.
issues, and
Mm.
just try to help you overall as a person,
Right.
not knowing that she had a totally different agenda. But my father had already told me, like, okay, with this
Uh-huh.
right here, I want you to show her my love through you, because
Mm,
I had been celibate
mhm,
for like maybe 3 years or so prior,
mhm,
because the person that I was with that got locked up with me, he was in jail. And
mm,
he when he got out of jail, it was an issue came up, found out that they had locked him back up
mhm.
because he supposedly had sexually um harassed his daughter,
Oh,
his 14, 15-year old
oh,
daughter.
oh, oh. Hmm.
I tell you, I couldn't win for losing that round. I'm telling you, all this stuff was happening back to back to back to back, and I
Whew.
love this guy. Like, I was like, this is the one. I'm gonna marry him. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do
Mm,
that. Well,
mm,
honey, that was not the
mm,
one at all.
mm, mm,
Yes, it was not the one, and I just
mm,
was like, this is too much. So I just,
mm,
like, I didn't want to be in a relationship. I said, honestly, I said I would never be with a guy again. I didn't want to. I said I
mm.
will stay married to Yah, and I'll be with him, and that's it.
That's
You know,
and
I'm
you
good.
fine with that.
Right,
Hmm.
I'm fine with it. I'm good.
Right,
I'm all right.
right.
So when she came along, um, and being that she was in that type of lifestyle she was in, what she was doing didn't penetrate to me at all.
Mm.
You know, it didn't penetrate to me at all. I had already had people in my family that, so I already knew
Right,
where
right,
my boundaries were with her. But what I
right,
didn't know was how serious her situation was, period. I was
right.
at work one day and I had another young lady with me. She was a Caucasian girl that was staying with me, and they were both in the same area or whatever. And I had house rules. So one of the rules was, you don't dip and dab, you know what I'm saying? So um I was at work and I called to check on them, and I
Mm-hmm.
spoke to her and I said, well, is Tequila all right? And she was like, I haven't talked to her. She hasn't been out of your room in the last 15 minutes or so. I said, in my room? I was shocked when
Mm-hmm.
she said that, because my room is normally locked. And there's an office before you get to my bedroom. And that's why when she said my room, I was like, right away, the Ruah hit me like, leave now and go home. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
tell my boss or my supervisor, nobody, I was leaving. I just left and got in my car and went straight home. I was no more than
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes away from my house. I went straight home.
Mm-hmm.
I got in my room. When I got to the office, all I could hear playing was Take Me to the King. You know
Hmm.
the song Take Me to the King?
Yep. Uh-huh.
And so,
Uh-huh. I know that song.
so I went to open my door and my door wasn't unlocked. I had to take the key and unlock my door. And I
Right.
get in there and she's stretched out on my bed, pills all around her.
Really?
I immediately called 911,
Wow.
CPR on her, and she is totally gone.
What? Our you talking
Yes,
about our sis? Our sis
yes,
tequila? Wow, I
yes,
didn't know that part.
yes. And I'm
Oh.
trying to bring her back, and I'm steady working on her, working on her. The ambulance finally come in, and they're working on her, and they get her back. They get her heart beating and everything. And I'm sitting here just like,
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, I'm sure that was a sight to see. Oh, mm.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I was
Oh
like,
my. Oh,
this is not happening.
right. Hmm. Yeah. I can just about imagine. Oh my. Hmm.
I just couldn't believe that she would.
Hmm.
I didn't see it coming.
Right. Right.
I didn't know how hurt and painful she was going, what
Oh,
she was really going through inside. And to
right.
see her like that, even now today, I'm like overprotective because I know how real it is for people who don't have somebody to talk to. She has me to talk to.
Right.
But there are people who don't have a me to talk to.
Right. Right. That's so true. Mm. Mm.
So I
Mm.
she got together and
Mm.
I end up having her stay with me to get her through all the hurt and the pain that she was going through in her life,
Bless your heart. Oh,
and not
yeah,
knowing
it's amazing.
all the
Mm.
stuff that she was going through.
Right. Right.
So when she got better, she came with me. She started going with me to church because she didn't want to go to church from all the times that she has been hurt in the church. But I
Mm.
convinced her to go to this church, and I
Mm.
told her that she'd be safe at this church with me.
Right.
And they had started a pantry program, and so we went through
Mm.
the training, and we started doing a pantry. And I gave up the job at the place I was at. I gave that job up just to take care of her.
Oh, how nice. Oh,
I
that's
knew that
beautiful.
she needed somebody that's gonna be there for her,
Yes. Yes.
and somebody that was gonna be strong enough not to feed into the madness. Despite what
Right.
people felt and despite what people said, I didn't care. I
Right.
didn't care.
That's the love of Yah. That's
I didn't
love.
care. I
Mm.
showed her the love the best way I could. I taught her
Yeah.
everything I could about the Bible. That no weapon
Mm.
formed against you will prosper was one of the first
Yes.
things I taught her.
Oh.
And everything I give to Yah, because none of it was me.
Yes.
It was all Yah.
Yes.
It was me. It was all
Yes.
Yah. I take
Yes.
none of the glory, none of the praise, because He
Yes.
was the one that was using me for this baby.
Yes. Yes.
So after
Mm.
that happened, we had an issue with the pantry situation, and I ended up having to leave that congregation
Mm-hmm.
because they just wasn't right. They didn't do us
Mm-hmm.
right, so I had to leave. And
Right.
when I left there is when I started my journey on trying to find out what was wrong, with the church system, with the
Mm.
Christian system. I never called myself a Christian, even was there. I called myself a child
Wow.
of the Most High. I never called myself a Christian.
Mm.
I'm like, I'm not a Christian. I said,
Mm.
I'm a child of the Most High. There's one God and there's one children. That's how I had it. Matter of my group.
Right.
It says one God, one God, one child. That's the name of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
the Father, he led me to make different groups. One of them is No Hurt, No Pain.
Yes,
That's
share.
one of them.
No pain.
Women's
Okay.
Connection, Women's Man Connection. I have like 5 different groups on
Right.
Facebook.
On
In case
Facebook, I was just
anybody,
about to ask.
right, on Facebook.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so we end up getting a house. We bought a house together, and I
Mm-hmm.
said this is a way so you don't have to worry about, because her family would threaten to put her away and this, that, and the other. I said no, we're gonna get this house so you don't have to ever worry about where you're gonna go or any of that. My
Mm-hmm.
baby boy, he was graduating from high school and he had to go to college, and I said this way he'll have a place to come back to. It
Mm.
seemed like the perfect thing to do. Everything in
Right.
life was fine. We had a transportation business going on where we would take people from town to different jobs, because in the country they don't have a car and a way to get around to do jobs. So we
Right.
figured we could be a ministry we could start, since we weren't doing the pantry. We can go ahead and
Right.
start a ministry. And we took
Mm.
and we started taking people back and forth to their jobs so that they could work
Mm.
until they were
Right.
self-sufficient to do it themselves. Well,
Mm.
my sister somehow got on drugs.
Mm.
She got on drugs, and
Mm.
I tried to work with her with it, told her the normal stuff I would tell anybody like that would be in our group and stuff. I would tell her, like, look, you don't want to do that. Not knowing that
Right.
she was on crack. I thought she was just smoking weed.
Right.
And
So I
so
didn't know
one
you guys. I'm sorry.
uh,
I didn't know you guys had got your. So when you guys came together, she wasn't. It wasn't at that point yet for the drugs that came a little later.
right, right.
Okay.
Like I knew
Okay.
when I met her, I knew she smoked weed and I knew
Right.
she had a history of using, but I didn't know that she used crack. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I
Okay.
just thought she
Okay.
smoked weed. I didn't know that she did
Okay.
crack. And she never did
Okay.
it while she was with me. She was with me for like
Okay.
maybe 4 years or so, and I never seen her do
Really?
anything like that, you know.
Wow.
And if she ever smoked any weed, she never did it around me. So,
Right.
I
Right.
never knew her to do that. So,
Right.
this one particular day, we came back from taking one of the clients to their job, and I said to her, I said, I feel pain in my back, but like I told you, I had back issues and stuff from when I had got hurt at the prison anyway. And
Right.
so, but this was a different type of pain. And she said, well, just go and lay down. You'll be all right. Maybe it's just your back acting up or whatever. And so I told her, I said, but this is different. The pain's shooting down my leg. And so I went and laid down, took my medicine, laid down. And the next morning when I got up, sister, I couldn't even make it from my bed to my bathroom. And I had a bathroom in my bedroom. I screamed and yelled for her
Mm.
and my grandson. My grandson was staying with me at the time, and he was 15.
Mm.
And they came down and it was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? I said, I can't move. I'm in
Mm.
pain. The pain was so excruciating, I couldn't even think straight. I
Mm.
really couldn't even think straight. That's how bad it
Right.
was. And
Mm.
so um they got me back to my bed and everything. And I didn't pay too much attention to her because I was too busy with the pain I was in. But
Right.
she left. She said, I'm going to the store and I'll be back. She left
Mm.
and went to the store. I didn't see her for a week.
Mm. Wow.
It was a week or so before she came back.
Wow. Mm. Wow.
I hadn't been in the house long because boxes and stuff. I hadn't even unpacked boxes and stuff and everything. We would still have boxes because we were in the process of the business and moving.
Right.
So I didn't even
All of
have a
that.
chance to really unpack and everything and really settle down in the house. And she was
Right.
gone. She had left and went on
Mm.
a run. And I didn't even
Wow.
know that she was on this run. I'm just thinking
Right.
that something happened to her and the whole
Right.
nine. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is not going to end well. And what
Right.
am I going to tell her mother? Okay.
Mm.
We're sisters,
Mm.
spiritual sisters, and everything else.
Right.
And, you know,
Mm.
we tell everybody we have the same father because Yah is our father.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Yah's our
Yes,
father.
indeed.
But
Yes, indeed. Yes.
so after I figured out something was seriously wrong here, I started asking questions. And despite the pain I was in, I was going riding around, just trying to figure out what's going on. I went all the way back to where her mom was, where she came from, to see if anybody had heard from her or anything. Nobody knew where she was at. Her mom didn't know
Mm.
where she was at. And
Mm.
then I get a call on the phone, and it was a friend of mine that said they seen her, and it was
Mm.
like, you might want to go get her because where she's at, she should not be. So
Mm.
that's when it all started with the addiction part of her situation. And I
Right.
would literally take her to uh back to the hospital to try to get her help. And this
Right.
went on for like a couple of years. But a year, yeah, a couple of years after this happened, we're going into now 2017. And um I was on the phone and I looked on my phone, and there was this weird message from a messages, and it said to me a prayer on it, and I noticed the name on there, and I looked at the name, and I said, that person has the same last name as my biological last name. So I texted them
Mm.
and I asked them, did they know anybody? Because I was looking for my biological mother. Now,
Mm.
mind you, through the years, I spent thousands of dollars trying to find them, but I had did this ancestry thing a year before this happened. And so
Mm.
I said, I had gave up on the ancestry thing because it didn't give me no hits where it went nowhere. You know, it would tell
Mm.
you like, oh, you have a person that's second cousin or something, but nothing that was
Right.
close enough that it was my mom or anything like that. So it
Right.
was a year went past, and I get this text, and I text this person, and then when I'm looking at it, I said I seen another one. It said, you know, hey, my name is such and such, and I've been looking, to try to communicate with you because your DNA is closer to mine than my aunt.
Mm.
I'm like, what? So
Whoa.
I said, let me text the person back. So I text the person back, and I go to the store, and I'm in the store, and this person calls me through the phone. You know how you can call through Messenger. They call me through Messenger, and they're talking to me, and it's this guy. He says, my name is such and such, and um your DNA was close to mine. I think maybe you're a cousin of mine or such and such, something close to me or whatever. And I said,
Mhm.
well, I'm looking for my mother. And I tell him what my mother's name is. And I tell him, a little bit of information and everything. And I said, but I'm in the store. Can you call me back? And he said, sure. He said, I'll call you back. And so before I could even get to the counter to ring up my stuff and cash out, he calls back and he says, such and such. No, he says, Melinda. He says, Melinda, you're my sister.
Whoa.
I'm like, what? He says, you're my sister and your mother is living and wants to talk to you.
Ooh. Wow.
I
Mm.
literally just froze for a minute. Like, I'm
Right?
like, what? And he
Mm.
said, yes. He says, and she's been looking for you.
Wow.
He
Mm.
says, she's been looking for you. And,
Mm.
you have six siblings, and he's running all this stuff down to me. And I'm like, wait a minute, can you just let me get home and I'll call you back? Because I'm trying to
Mm.
digest some of this.
Right.
I'm trying to
Right.
digest
Of
it.
course. Right.
So I get home, and sure enough, that was my brother and my mother. I gets on the phone, and I'm like, Ma,
Oh.
I've been waiting for you all my life.
Oh. Oh.
I said,
Oh.
I just
Hallelujah.
want to tell you how grateful I am that you loved me enough to give me away
Mm.
when you couldn't take care of me. I
Oh.
said, I was so blessed to have two parents to love me. I said, I'm not
Mm.
angry with you. I said, I
Oh.
am so grateful to you. And I'm so
Oh.
grateful to the Most High for allowing me to have
Oh.
the ability to talk to you and tell you. And she was like, she was in tears, and she was just
Mm.
telling me how much she loved me and how much she was looking for me. And I had that
Oh.
moment with her for about, let me see, my brother came and got me and took me to her. Matter of fact, he came and see me a week after we found each other. He came all the way from Alabama to my house, and
Wow. Oh.
he brought my uncle and his wife with him, and it was his wife actually who this all transpired through because she gave them gifts of these ancestry kits for Christmas, and that's how
Really?
it happened. Yeah, she gave these. That's what she gave them for gifts
Right.
to some of her to her husband, which was my brother, and a couple other people, and that's how this transpired. And he came and got me, and he even took me to see my mom, and we surprised her. She knew I was coming, but she didn't know when. And she was
Mhm.
on dialysis. She was, by this time she was 79 years old, and she was on dialysis. She has a lot of health issues and stuff. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I really felt like she held on just for me.
Mm.
Right after this happened,
Mm.
by this time it's 2017, 2018, going into 2019, that's when the COVID started.
Right.
So I didn't get a chance to see her anymore after that. She
Mm.
passed away the end of that
Mm.
year. 20,
Mm. Sorry to hear that.
yeah, 2020 she
Mm.
passed away.
Mm. Wow.
2022 she passed away. And so
Mhm.
I had a couple years with her.
Mm. Wow.
It
Wow.
was
Praise
it was
God for that, huh? You're right.
praise God
You
for
was
that. It
able
was
to meet
amazing.
her and spend time with her. Oh,
Yes. And my
hallelujah.
situation with my health got worse. Tequila got worse. She was out there really bad. And
Mm.
they told me that I would never walk again. I was bedbound for a year. They said I
Mhm.
would never walk again because where the sciatic nerve problem was,
Mhm.
they couldn't do surgery, but that they can give me epidural shots.
Mm.
So they did that, and I started getting better.
Okay.
I started praying, and I started doing research on um, Israelites,
Mm.
all about
Wow.
it. Started
Just out of the
talking,
blue. You just
started talking
started
to
out
my
of the blue.
out of the
Mhm.
blue. I
Mhm.
started doing research on it. What made no, it wasn't out of the blue.
Okay.
This sister from the group that I used to belong to, she
Okay.
was into it. That's how it's happening. She was into
Mm.
it, and she would inbox me and certain things. And I was checking it out and seeing, what she was doing and everything. And, just listening to her and the different ways she was talking and, what she was talking about and everything. And that's how I started
Okay.
um getting into the walk was through Facebook back and forth with her and her texting me different stuff and information about it. And then my
Mm.
nephew, I didn't know he had been in a life for 36 years. So
Wow.
I got in touch with him and he started telling me more and feeding me more information and everything. And
What?
yeah, yeah. And so I got sick with the COVID. The first battle got through it, I was fine. The second time I got it, I got really kind of sick from it. And they told me that it was the reason why I was having some issues with my heart. Like I kept having problems, chest pain and stuff like that. And they were saying it was probably from the COVID. It takes people time to get bounced back or whatever. I was
Mhm.
dumb and I was fine the whole time I was bedbound, didn't get sick with the COVID, but why did I go and take one shot? Shouldn't have did that.
Mm.
I'm sorry, but I tell anybody, do not take those shots. Do not do none of that. I don't care what nobody tell you. Yah will
Mm.
take care of you. He
Right.
will take care of you. You don't need to do all that. You don't. That's why he says not even poison will kill you. He says, behold, I give unto you the power to tread serpents and scorpions and all the power of the enemy. He already tells you in the word. So
Right.
we don't need to do certain things. And now I know better. And I
Right.
repent for that because your faith has to be great and you have to work that thing. Work, faith without works is dead.
That's
So,
true.
with that being said, I end up getting sick with it a third time. But this time it did me in, Sister Avia.
Mm.
It did me in. I'm gonna make this really fast. It messed with my stomach. I had got the gastric bypass surgery done 13 years ago, but this did something that messed it up. And I sent you some pictures so you know that I went through a lot and I'm still recovering now.
Right.
And so I lost 50 pounds actually. Woohoo!
Yes. Yes.
I
I've
lost
seen
50
that.
pounds.
It's great.
Yes, I lost 50 pounds. They had to go in there and they found complications. So they ended up actually have to do what they call a restructure. They had to do it over again, which wasn't in the plan. It was just a medical thing that they were supposed to be doing. But they end up having to do it over again because it was so severe. Yeah. So that's when Tequila came and stayed with me, and I told her, because she had gotten to the streets so bad that she got into a legal situation, and I went in there and I advocated for her at the court, and they said that they would let me have her stay with me so long as she would, stay clean and do what she's supposed to do, and instead of sending her to jail, she came and stayed with me. And so she was with me ever since. And um, I started the walk about, it's been 6 months now that I've been deep into the walk. And I started watching you and your beautiful self and your husband. And
Oh,
I really was
thank you.
this is what I was in the hospital for 6 months. Yeah, I was in the hospital and I was watching you, and I said,
In the
wow.
hospital?
That's why I said I was in the hospital, and I was on my phone. I hit you, somehow got to your page, and I immediately it clicked. It clicked in me. I said, "Wow!" And that same night is when I was telling you. I don't know if I explained it to you, but I was in the hospital, and they let me go from the hospital when I had the surgery. And after I got home, 2 days after I got home, my chest was hurting really bad. I felt like I couldn't breathe. So I went back. And that's when they told me, they said, look, if you didn't come back, you wouldn't be having this conversation right now because you had 3 blood clots in your lungs.
Mm. Oh my
3 blood
goodness.
clots in my lungs. And they took me and they kept me that night. Tequila was with me. She stayed here with me. And um, this nurse came in. The first nurse was there. She was really nice and everything. But this Jamaican lady came in, and it was weird. The whole atmosphere just changed. It was really kind of weird. But I was so sick, Abiyah, that I really couldn't, like, I was really so weak and sick. And my heart level was so low. It was like a 40, 42. And they had me on all these monitors and all this stuff to monitor my heart and everything. And
Right.
they had me on heparin, trying to get my blood thinning so that the clot would go away. And so she came in and I asked her, I said, are you from Kingston, Jamaica? Because I could hear an accent. And she got kind of snooty with me. And I said, well, okay. And then she told me where she was from, and she didn't come back far as I knew. But while I was sleeping under these medications, I found out that I didn't bring my CPAP machine with me, and I didn't know, but my heart level got too low where the alarm came off. It was like 30 something. And so Tequila got nervous. She came over. She said, because I was turning, like I looked like I was turning blue in my lips. And she said that she felt me and I was really cold, and she shook me. And I finally woke up, and I can remember that because I looked at her. I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, something's wrong, and then nobody's coming in here, and I don't know what to do. And I told her, calm down. And I pat her on the back. I said, just stay here. And I told her, she was at the end of my bed. And I said, just go to sleep and relax, just relax. And she's like, no, the man's right there. The man's standing right there, the handsome man. I'm never going to be the same again. I said, what handsome man? I'm looking, I don't see nothing. I didn't see nothing out there. Where she was pointing to, I didn't see nothing. Okay, I said, and I just thought maybe she was just tired or just,
Right.
And she said, no, I'm never going to be the same again. I'm never going to be the same again. And she just kept saying it. And I kept trying to calm her down, like, calm down. And so she finally calms down and she falls asleep. And then about 5 something in the morning, the woman comes in and she said, yeah, I see your sister was asleep at the end of the bed. So I know between what she told me, because she woke up, she said the lady was outside the door and wouldn't come in, but the thing was ringing. And so I knew she was telling the truth about that, because the woman said she saw her sleeping at the bottom of my bed. And in order for her to do that, she had to see through the door to see her at the bottom of my
She had
bed.
to see
She had
something.
to see something. So I knew what Tequila was telling me was true. So I said, Tequila, I said, what did you tell me earlier, when you said that she didn't come and answer the doorbell and somebody was in the room. She said the guy was, I think it was the J word. She said, I
Right,
think
right,
it was
right,
Jesus.
right, right.
And I said, can you kind of tell me how they were standing or whatever? Was they said she said they were standing like a soldier. I said they were standing like a soldier. So the first thing I thought it was about the angel Michael.
Right.
That's the first thing in my mind I gave him something. And so I told the supervisor when 7 o'clock came and she left, I told the supervisor and explained what happened. And she said, wait a minute, I'm going to check this out because that should not happen. She said that's the reason why the alarm thing's on it. So if your heart rate goes a certain thing, it rings out to the nurse's station. You're supposed to come right in here. And so she looked it up, and sure enough, it was a spiritual thing.
Right.
I don't think she could come in my room.
Mm-hmm. You was being
I
guarded.
don't think she was able to come in my room because she didn't have no good intentions. And the woman that came in, the nurse that came in, she said everybody that comes here to do this job don't do the job. And the way she said it, I knew what she was talking about.
Right. Oh my.
But I'm gonna end
Y'all
there.
was with you.
I'm gonna end there and tell you that
Mm-hmm.
through this journey and all this stuff that I told you about and learning about who I am has set me free.
Hallelujah.
Has set me totally free. Because I know now who I am. I serve the Most High, Yahuwah.
Yes.
I know that Yeshua HaMashiach, He is the one that set the path for us, and that soon we all will be going home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it wasn't for your program and the way that you teach and the way that you tell the stories about the scriptures and the meditation that I watch every morning and when I go to bed at night, that comfort me on the nights that I can't sleep and the days that I can't remember scriptures and I write them down because you have them up there on the screen. If it wasn't for you and your husband, that YAH
He's
is
a big
using
part
you
of
the
it.
way he is.
Oh, appreciate that,
And it
sis.
may
All
not mean
praises and
nothing.
esteem to y'all.
It may not mean nothing to a lot of people, but I'm gonna tell you something. Somebody out there is going to see this, and they're gonna know that you don't have to be hurt by another person. You don't have to deal with mental illness by yourself. You don't have to hurt yourself because life is throwing you curves. And you surely don't have to pray to a God who don't hear you. Hallelujah.
Yes. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. You do not have to live your life that way. Come to the truth and know who you really are. Follow Sister Abia and her husband. And I guarantee you, and take your time learning. It's not a race. We don't have to hurry up and do this. I have a children's Bible. I have a King James is 11. I have
Share it. Tell it.
books. I have a lot of books that I use. And I'm not going to lie to you. There's days when I have a brain fog because of medications that I have to take right now. But I'm working on my herbs and stuff. You know, I have a bad garden inside and out. And I'm
I
going
see
to
that nice garden.
I'm working on getting off the medications even because all medications are not good, but I pray on everything.
Right.
So I'm telling you, there's some medicines that are necessary for you to take them if it's going to help to make you better.
Right.
But thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you
We
so
thank
much.
you for sharing your testimony. And it was a beautiful testimony.
Any questions you want to ask me?
Be- Before we end it, I just want to say if anyone hasn't seen because they probably wondering who's Tequila if they never seen her testimony yet. We also have her testimony up, and this is the beautiful soul that Yahuwah used. He worked through her to lead Tequila to him. So yes, just wanted to share that. But you kind of like touched on pretty much everything, but I guess we can ask if there's anyone that is new and maybe like, because we normally ask this, they straddling, like on the fence and not sure, should I, should I check this out or not? Like, what would be your advice to them?
My advice would be to go ahead and definitely find out where you come from. Once you find out where you come from and find out the truth about how they lied to you, and that's the most hurtful part that I dealt with, is to find out that I lived all these years in a lie, that I've been lied to, and how I have to change everything. I have a platform, I have people following me, and now I have to change the words and terminology. And I would suggest that you would take your time and examine where you're at. If you're in church now and you feel like it's not right for you, then it's not. Listen to yourself. Pray on it. Prayer works. Prayer works. That's what got me through. That's what got me to where I'm at now in the walk. Because I prayed to Yah, and Yah said, no, this is not right. You're not in the right place. This is not where I want you. And I looked, and you popped up. You just popped up on YouTube one day.
All the steam
I was looking at somebody else, I was looking at somebody else. I really couldn't hear them. I couldn't hear them and couldn't understand, them. But everything is not for everybody. And I'm not saying that they should listen to everybody, because they shouldn't listen to everybody. But what they should do is to pray to Yah about it. And to know that it's going to take time. You're going to still say God. You're going to still say Jesus. And even if you do, just understand it's going to take time. It took you time to find the truth. So it's going to take you time to take that walk. I'm still on formula.
Right. It's a daily thing, a daily perfection, a daily perfecting, a daily cleansing for us all. So
yes, ma'am.
That's why we need Yahuwah.
That's right. Yes. And we do need them. And I tell anybody that's taking a walk also, that's already in it, to be mindful that everybody's not on the same level. So you can't treat everybody the same way. Because I had one sister that came at me so hard, but I'm grateful now though, but she came at me so hard in the beginning that I almost walked away. So
that's what we talk about.
Right. So those that's been in it need to be mindful, that we're gonna make mistakes. She was saying it because I would put Yahuwah's name, and then I would put an emphasis God, to let the people know that's who I was talking about. She was like, you don't do that, You do how
what about the people that don't know?
Right. You do it how it works for you. So I do it like that. And guess what? I have people following me now. And they're saying Yahuwah. And they're saying Yeshua. They're using the terminology. They know what it means. You have to break things down for people.
And you have to meet people where they are.
Right. And all that, hardcore prejudice, this, that, and the other stuff, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. And it's not in the scripture to do that.
I agree. Well, you couldn't have said. I couldn't have said better. So thank you so much, sis. I appreciate it. And we're gonna end.
Like I said, I hope that other people come forth with their testimonies. Brothers, please come forth with their testimonies, because we all, I know you're men, brothers, but there are other brothers and young brothers that need to hear your testimonies. How you slinging drugs out on the street, how you did this, that, and the other, and came to where you're at. They need to hear it so we can get them off the street.
That's why we keep calling for our brothers. Mm-hmm. We need them.
We need them. Yes. Sisters, y'all was out there prostituting, doing you. Okay. But now you're considering the walk, consider the other ones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speak it, sis.
We have to come together as a family.
We do.
We do.
We do.
We do.
It's our prayer
It's our
for that,
prayer
for
for
sure.
that.
Thank you for saying
Thank you
that.
for saying that.
Yeah. Well, all right,
Well, all
sis.
right,
We're gonna
sis.
end.
One more thing.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. This is one more thing I have to close with because I have 8 children, 21 grandchildren, 2 great grandchildren, sisters that got children, brothers that got children. Teach your children now. Teach them now. These are the last days. Please teach your children now. Don't wait. I don't care if they're rebellious or whatever. Teach them. Keep teaching them. Keep praying for them. That's it.
Yes.
Yes.
Very true.
Very true.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
sis.
so much, sis.